I am here with my friend Adam of Plugged In fame. Hello, Adam.
How are you doing, Andy?
I'm fine. Hay fever is at an all-time high.
Oh
The
man.
grass is just, let's just chuck clouds of pollen into the atmosphere.
Oh,
Everybody listening is now scratching and itching and reaching
I
for
know, right? Well,
antihistamine. It's
you can
fine.
probably hear my nose is stuffed up too, so I'm not
Yeah,
much better.
I absolutely adore where we live. The slight downside of living in the middle of farmland is you do get a lot of farmland pollen, but it's fine. It's part
Yes,
of God's beautiful creation.
it is. It is. So, what should we
Right.
talk about today?
Well, where do you want to go? Have we got books, CDs, movies, films? I mean,
Well, I always like to start with the movie, mostly because I think that's what people might have the highest level of awareness of, and then we'll go in some different directions. So, here in the United States, we have all kinds of racing. And I think that there may be a Formula One event somewhere,
okay,
but it's not like it is in Europe, right? I mean, F1 in Europe is huge.
pretty
And
big.
now we have F1, the movie, which stars Brad Pitt. If you're going to throw some old movie star in a racing movie, it feels like Brad Pitt is as likely a candidate as any. He plays a guy named Sonny Hayes, who had a very, very promising start to his career, had a horrible accident when he was young, and it really just kind of took him out. And so he has continued racing just kind of wherever he can, whatever he can, dirt track, racetrack. But he has an old friend named Ruben who has now come into possession of an F1 team, and it's not a very good team. And Ruben says, "Hey, we need some help. Why don't you come take one last shot at this 30 years after the last time you crashed out? And oh, by the way, we have a young driver named Joshua. We want you to mentor him as well." And so, it's a pretty standard issue sports underdog movie. It's not going to be a huge mystery where things go. If you like racing, it's a beautiful film. It was shot by or directed by Joseph Kosinski, who's not a household name, but he did Top Gun Maverick. He was the director of that. And so they really sought to, and people are saying that they succeeded at producing maybe the most realistic racing movie ever made. So it is intense, it's fast, there are lots of car wrecks, there's a fair bit of profanity. Definitely want to check out our full review as always before you go to this one. But if you like F1 racing, if you like Brad Pitt, not necessarily in that order, this might be something worth checking out for, older teens on up.
I do remember watching something of the makings of one of the Bourne films with Matt Damon. And one of
Yeah,
the things they said about him, he was really good at not just doing what they said, but actually thinking just a bit further. So it wasn't just turn your steering wheel here, off you go. Yeah, there was that, but
right.
also there was sort of some feeling in there as well, which they said he was really good. And watching these stunt guys and these like specialists in drivers saying he's
Yep.
really good at this.
Yeah. And I would say Brad Pitt really acquits himself nicely here. I'm not a Brad Pitt fanboy, but we got to give credit where credit's due. He fits the part, and he's an interesting character. Our reviewer Brett Eckleberry said it almost feels like a Western, right? That you have this gunslinger who is without a home, and he kind of wanders through the West and has these battles, and then at the end kind of just wanders off back toward the horizon as the sun sets. And so I thought that was an interesting comparison because I wouldn't have thought to necessarily compare a racing movie to a Western, but it has that kind of old schoolish kind of vibe to it.
Well, that one's got me hooked. If it's got a bit of Western in there, I'm already thinking that's what I quite fancy watching, which maybe reveals something of me. John Wayne fan.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
I love John Wayne. He's great.
Yeah.
Wasn't he brilliant? Right. Anyway, where would you like to take us next? Because
Well,
I that
let's
sounds
do
really
a
cool.
video game. We have a new game out. Our review is just going up. I've just got done editing it. It'll be up later today. It is called Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time. And this is a game that's rated E for everyone. And that usually means that there's no content to deal with. Now, this is a game, it's kind of a sim game where you play this cute little character and you establish a little city, you do some fighting, some crafting, some gathering. There are 12 different sim kind of jobs you can do. And you can choose three kind of different characters. You can be a paladin, you can be a woodcutter, or a blacksmith. So I think just from a creative perspective, there are lots of entry points here. There is a bit of combat, and we do get some sort of sword and sorcery elements and some spiritual elements that have a vaguely Eastern feel to them. And different families are going to feel differently about that. I know there are a lot of Christian families that if you start talking reincarnation or elements of that ilk, they're going to be out. It's not over the top. It's not pushing a very specific worldview, but it has kind of a vaguely fantasy meets Eastern spirituality kind of vibe to it. So it's also, interestingly, even though it's aimed at kids, a casual playthrough, you might spend 40 or 50 hours here. And our reviewer, Bob, who said completionists, those who have to do everything, you could spend 100 hours on this game. And I think that as we think about well, let me back up. I think that we often talk about the influence of screens as if it's all the same kind of influence, right? But it's not. There's a big difference between playing a video game for 100 hours straight through versus watching a 30-second TikTok video, right? They're engaging us differently. There are different content and worldview concerns to be aware of. And so, we have this ongoing conversation about screen time, but we also need to be asking, well, what kind of screen time? And what are the unique things that as parents we need to be thinking about in terms of how too much, too little, short form video, long form games, how those might be influencing our kids differently.
Even how we access those is different.
That too.
So
Totally.
my older two sons now access social media via computers. If I'm using Facebook, I detest it on a phone because it just takes you to adverts. You can't control anything. Whereas I use something called Facebook Purity, which means I actually get to see Facebook as I'd like to see it in the correct order, minus the adverts. And the thing is, it's much more enjoyable. It's much safer. I'm not getting all the rubbish that you don't want. And even how we access that digital content is important to factor in.
Yeah. And I remember a time when we were sort of tipping away from desktop and laptop computers toward a bigger percentage of our traffic at Plugged In being on phones. And I remember thinking, why would you ever want to look at this content on a phone? That's dumb. And that was like probably 10 years ago, right? And now we're about 80 to 90% phone traffic and just a small sliver is on desktop. And you just keep habituated to that thing in your hand, right? And experiencing it in a different kind of medium. It's like, oh, wow, this is really different. I forgot what this was like. So you're exactly right. We do experience different screens in different ways. And there could be pros and cons both directions, both in terms of usability and the way that we interact with those screens.
We don't put a computer in our pocket, but we do put a mobile phone in our pocket. And we carry that with us. And that's where we've seen, I know about the US, this is definitely on a tangent, but some of the mental health crises are because children are coming home from schools, colleges, universities.
Oh, yeah.
They come home and the bullying follows them.
Yep.
Whereas at least it used to stop at the school gate. And now it's carrying into their bedroom. Parents don't know about it. And we have this mental health nightmare that's going on. So parents,
that's exactly right.
Be aware of what your children are having fed to them as much as what they are trying to feed themselves with.
Yep. So do we have time for one more? Or have
Let's do one more.
Tangented it off here.
I think we'll squeeze one more in. We'll make it happen.
We'll squeeze one more in. So the last thing I want to talk about is Ironheart. And Ironheart is a Marvel superhero whom we met in the last Black Panther movie. Her name is Riri Williams, and she is sort of like a much less wealthy version of Iron Man. She is a brilliant inventor, and she is creating her own Iron Man armor. But she's mostly interested in making money to keep doing what she wants to do. and she kind of gets roped into helping some bad guys pull off a heist. So it's kind of got that anti-hero vibe about it. And there are lots of signs in the first couple episodes that, she's going to wake up and come to her senses and realize that she doesn't want to be a bad guy. But that hasn't happened yet. And along the way, that particular bad guy is a guy named the Hood, who is possessed by a demonic-like influence. So that's the first spiritual issue we have to deal with. And he has put together a group of bad guys that includes a cross-dresser and a trans character. And so the last, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year or so, it feels like we've talked about that less with Disney properties, but this one has tons of that kind of content. So they seem to be leaning back into that. And, with all due respect to the broader conversation about those issues, I think there are a lot of parents that really don't want drag superheroes or drag supervillains in their superhero shows. And there's quite a bit of language here anyway. This is not a kids program. So there are other, more mundane problems. But I think on balance, we watched it and thought, there are, I think, a lot of elements here that are going to quickly turn people off. It's like, I'm not interested in that. So that is Ironheart on Disney Plus.
Adam, thank you as ever. And people can get all this information. You keep talking about these reviews. Where do they come to get it all?
You can come to pluggedin.com, and we are a ministry of Focus on the Family.
Adam, thank you. Have a fantastic rest of your day, my friend.
I will do it. Thanks so much, Andy.
Take care. The July issue of Pure Media, the magazine, comes out on Friday the 4th of July with a plethora of amazing writers speaking about life, hope, money, technology and more. In our July edition, we take a focus on Matt McKay and his band Meet Your Maker, as well as shining a light on John Cox and so much more. The digital version is always freely available online. But did you know you can also enjoy the convenience of a printed subscription too? For all of this and more, just head over to www.puremediathemagazine.com www.puremediathemagazine.com